It's only fitting that in our tribute to John Otto, we open the show with the song that served as his theme, Mr. Lou from Dick Dale. It was heard on the soundtrack of the movie Pulp Fiction. Every night at 10:05, this theme served to let us know what was to come. But it wasn't the song that we longed to hear. It was the voice that followed the song. The voice that spoke so articulately, so soothingly, so smoothly, and so knowledgeably. When we heard those special words...
This is John, your operator on.
We knew that we would be entertained, informed, confronted, and comforted. But as of 5:20 this morning, Monday, December 6th, 1999, that voice, that wonderful voice, is silent. Silent, but not silenced. Because for all of us who knew John, and to hear John was to know him on the radio. To hear him night after night was to know him better. To his family, his co-workers, and most of all, his listeners, his voice cannot be silenced. His words, his voice, his inflection, the special nuances, his laughter, and yes, even sometimes his impatience, for John did not suffer fools lightly. All will live in our collective memory. I'm Jim Pastrick. It is a sad honor to be here tonight to eulogize John. As a young man, I knew him as a listener, and I consider myself privileged to have worked with him as program director of WGR News Radio 55. With me is Tom Bauerle, and we are here tonight to pay tribute to John on his show. We offer it to you, his loyal listeners, as a way to remember him and to pay tribute to him. We hope that you'll participate in this living memorial. But it's not our intent to mourn John Otto's death. Certainly there is reason to be somber tonight. But we would rather want to celebrate John's life, particularly his career, and the bond that he created with you, his valued listeners. A few years ago, when John was about to be inducted into the Western New York Broadcasters Hall of Fame, I asked him to write a biography for the presentation ceremonies. Sadly, and frankly, no bio existed here in the radio station, and who better to write that biography than John himself? Well, he protested modestly. But eventually, he wrote that biography, however short. It was written in elegant cursive handwriting. And as I looked at it, his handwriting was as elegant as his speech.
Certainly there comes a time when your genial co-communicator runneth out of words, when nothing is pronounced any longer trippingly from the tongue.
This is a tribute to John Otto on WGR News Radio 55. And now, here is Tom Bauerle.
Thanks, Jim. This is indeed a sad honor to be here in this building, this room, this booth, this microphone tonight. And as you know, as you listen to us, we've lost a colleague, a friend, and for many of us, a career inspiration. With the death of John Otto early this morning, all of us were and are sad. And you see, like you, we listen to John as fans as well as colleagues. John had some great shows even last week. Remember the Joke Off and his conversation with a man for whom he had a great liking, the Common Council President James W. Pitts. And of course, you will remember, thinking back to last week, his weekly red lighting of the caller he called Jim the Screw. We call him Rambo Jim. Like Jim Pastrick, I was one of the thousands of Western New Yorkers who grew up listening to John Otto on this radio station. As a young boy, I had an awe of John's command of the language, his vocabulary, his understanding of the issues. And then, as I got older, I began to appreciate his wit, his sarcasm, his subtle humor, and, of course, the legendary Otto skewering. John was an original, unique, irreplaceable. He lit the way. As his wife Sally told me this morning, John was a rock. Yeah, it has been a great honor knowing John, working with him all these years. I have my favorite Otto memories from on the air. I have my favorite Otto memories from off the air. He showed up at my birthday party in 1993, and my dad, we had a karaoke machine, my dad said, "John, are you going to get up there and sing?" And there was John, the king of the voice and the master of humility, saying, "Oh, Mr. Bauerle, me sing? I'm afraid I haven't the pipes." that was John. And I bet you have some of Ottoese in your language as well. Oh, sure. Do you do? Good of you to do. And I'm just glad that John lived to see his induction into the Buffalo Broadcast Hall of Fame, because I know that meant a lot to him. And as we move on tonight with talking with people in the community, talking with you, his listeners, please know that John would not have wanted maudlin tonight. John would not have wanted tears. In fact, we do want to celebrate his life and his career, and somewhere, Jim, I can almost hear him saying out there, "Oh, young Bauerle, do get on with it. Come on, talk about something interesting. Oi!"
This is a tribute to John Otto on WGR News Radio 55, and we are taking your calls this evening at 886-6450 on Frontier Cellular. It's star 55. Outside the local calling area in Toronto and points south on the Frontier Communications 800 line. It's 800-550-8227. Join us, won't you, in the celebration of John Otto here on WGR News Radio 55. We'll take a short break, and then we'll come back and we'll speak to a person who has known John for a long time, has listened to John, and we'll have some choice words for him and his show. We hope to speak to Keith Radford, who is a news anchor at Channel 7, right after this on WGR News Radio 55.
Buffalo. And Tom Bauerle, along with our program director, Jim Pastrick, remembering John Otto, the man, the life, the career, and all of our memories as a community. Let's go live right now to Channel 7's Keith Radford. Keith, good evening. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening, gentlemen. My pleasure.
Keith, how will you remember John Otto?
Yeah, so nice to have you on, as he would say. Or what was his other one? We'll get you on as quick as it takes to tell it.
And the largest party line on the Niagara frontier.
Well, you know, I think, I wish I didn't grow up in Buffalo, so I didn't listen to John in the 60s, because I wasn't here, obviously, but I listened to him ever since I arrived, going on 13 years now, and he was just genuine. I mean, he was real. There was no phony personality. There was no stunt to try and spike the ratings or try and get people riled up to cause controversy. He was just a real guy. I mean, I don't think he was any different in real life than what he was on the radio. And it was just a joy to listen to him. And his command of the English language, as everyone knows now, was unrivaled. The only person I can think of who came close was Eric Severide, who used to do those commentaries on the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. But it was just such a pleasure to listen to him, especially when he got excited, you know.
Did you happen to hear some of his more memorable, excited moments when somebody would really get on his nerves, like Jim the Screw did last week, and certainly others who earned the Ottoism Schifuzo, Fool, and Pinhead?
Well, there were some of those each night, I think.
You're right.
But, you know, it was funny because you could tell the moment someone called and expressed a viewpoint or an opinion and that he was totally against it. You knew from the moment, from his reaction, he would sit there and go, yeah, yeah. And I'd be driving home after the news at midnight every night and just laughing. You know, if people were looking and could see inside your car, they think, what the heck is that guy doing? But he was just so funny. I would never miss him if I could help it. It's great.
Keith, just one more question for you, and that is, as a broadcaster, as a pro, can you define or attempt to define the it John Otto had?
Well, John Otto did it the way it was supposed to be done. I was in radio for about 11 years before I got into TV and worked a little bit and know a little bit of the goings-on. And I've heard a lot of, I've been around and worked in quite a few markets, and I've heard people from all over the country, various talk show hosts, and John just seemed to, like I say, the key word was genuine. He was a real person. There was no putting on anything. I mean, he just, it was like you were sitting in your living room talking, or in his living room talking with him. It was real and genuine and from the heart, and he said exactly what he felt. There was no fooling around, no pandering to anyone. He was just a real, genuine guy, always polite, never rude that I can ever remember. Even when he really disagreed with somebody, Rarely did I ever hear him just hang up on anybody.
Yeah, John would use a laser and not a shotgun.
Yeah, he was, I don't know what we're going to do at night. I really looked forward to listening to him as I drove home, and I'm really, as thousands of people are going to really miss him.
Keith Radford, Channel 7, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, least I could do.
On WGR News Radio 55. We need to do a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Tony Violanti, the radio critic for the Buffalo News. Tom Bauerle with Program Director and Operations Manager Jim Pastrick, remembering John Otto on WGR 55.
I did. I intervened to respond to the barbs. You got to say something in response to an insult, you know. You don't let these things pass. At least I don't. Well, we don't play that game. Really. Yes, you can remember that.
That is John Otto in inimitable style as we commemorate his life and his performance here on WGR News Radio 55. A tribute to John Otto tonight. I'm Jim Pastrick, Program Director and Operations Manager of WGR 55, and I'm joined by our morning personality, Tom Bauerle. We'll go to the phone right now and we'll talk to Anthony Violanti, who has written some very, very, very entertaining and sometimes critical prose about John Otto, but nonetheless, you were always a fan, weren't you, Tony?
Absolutely, Jim. I mean, what a grand guy and what a radio personality. There's just no one else like him. And what I liked best about him, Jim, was the way he said my name on the air, Violanti. It sounded like Dean Martin singing That's Amore. I used to love it when he just said my name.
I hope you have tapes of him pronouncing your name.
Yes, I do. It's a great ego massage just to hear John Otto say your name.
Can I ask you what you hear, what you think when you hear these wonderful sound bites that we have from John's shows past?
It's just such a memorable expression of what Buffalo radio is at its best. And John had that incalculable combination of personality, wit, style, and most of all, Jim, command of the language. And it's so lacking today in radio. He's such an original. He's such a unique individual. Thinking about it today, I spent most of the day writing about John. I wrote an appreciation for tomorrow's news, but it's astounding how he touched this community and how he really became part of what I would call the fabric of Buffalo. It's like chicken wings and snowstorms. John Otto was there. He's just part of the terrain, the mental, emotional, physical terrain of Buffalo. It's amazing. I can't think of anyone else quite like him in terms of being a personality that touched the heart of this community.
Tony, you had a chance to talk with John not too long ago for a feature you did on local talk radio.
Right.
And all of those things you just said about John, which I believe to be absolutely true, I don't know that John ever fully grasped the impact he had on people. I don't know that John ever fully appreciated his own brilliance and his own influence. Can you comment on that and your feelings about that?
I totally agree, Tom. And I think he was a modest man in his own way. I think he knew his talent and he knew where he stood, but I don't think he ever realized how far he reached because he became such a part of life in Buffalo. I mean, it's almost a ritual in Buffalo. You go to bed, you get your warm milk and cookies, and you put John Otto on the radio. And I don't think he realized how much. It was almost like Johnny Carson with The Tonight Show. It just became part of your life. It was a daily routine, and whether you were going home working the second shift and going home at 11 or going to third shift or going to bed, somehow in those wee hours of the night, John Otto was always there. It was very comforting and very reassuring, I think because he had been on so long. But more than that, he understood Buffalo, and I think he represented Buffalo.
You know, Anthony, as we speak, we talk about his modesty, and as a program director, there are times when I'd sit down with him, and honestly, I was in awe of this guy, and I would sit on the other side of the desk, and he would say something to me like, "So, James, tell me, how are the ratings? How are we doing?" And I would always say, I had actually told him, "John, you're the man. Don't worry about it." Okay? Whether they're good, whether they're bad, and they were mostly good, I would say, don't be concerned with it. Just do what you've always done, because that's the best you can do, and it is great radio.
You know, I think, Jim, you hit it again, because John was an original. I mean, he started talk radio. I heard Tom talking this morning And really, he started it. He was the role model. He was the one who virtually invented talk radio as we know it today in this town. And the people who've come after, I think, in every way have patterned themselves in some way or another after John Otto. You can't imitate John Otto because no one has that kind of command of language who can create his own vocabulary when words can't be found. But it was the personality and the originality. And in a way, I think he was a throwback to two radio eras. He was kind of represented the past era, the Clint Buellmans and the Buffalo Bob Smiths, but he also had a foot in the present era.
Oh, very much so, because he enjoyed things that were contemporary. Witness the theme that he used night in and night out, Ms. Lou, from Pulp Fiction, which was a cutting-edge movie that many people didn't understand, and he loved it.
Absolutely, and I think that's what all outstanding talk radio shows have, is that ability to see beyond their own interest and their own bias. I mean, John and James Pitts, I mean, I think politically they're on different sides of the fence, and yet there was an electricity between them, I think because they just enjoyed each other's company and because John could open up to that. My most recent memory of John, I was on after the Woodstock Music Festival this summer.
Yes.
And John starts talking about Korn and Limp Bizkit. I almost fainted when he started, and he really knew his stuff. And I think that's a tribute to the fact that he kept up on things. He was not living in the past, and it was really something. And he used to always kid me about Ani DeFranco because I like Ani DeFranco, and he would start quoting her lyrics to me. I mean, it was really strange. But John was he was just. And the other thing I wanted to say about John, and I think everybody will touch on this tonight, is his humor. He could just crack me up, and I think it's that way with everybody. Wouldn't you agree, Tom? I mean, he could say good morning, and I'd be rolling on the floor.
The ultimate trip was going to dinner with John Otto, and unfortunately, given his health problems in recent years, we didn't have a chance to do it in recent years. But I can remember one night in particular sitting at the Polish Villa 2, and there is John Otto. Oh gosh, I don't know. Shall I have the filet or shall I have the strip? Oh, decisions, and it's just very ordinary conversation, but it was his inflection and his absolute appearance of being terror-struck at this momentous decision he had to make. The table was just in stitches.
And I loved his term, golly gee. That was another one. That was always a favorite of mine. And, you know, I think GR deserves a lot of credit, Jim, and I know I take you guys to task a lot, but in the last couple of years it's been very difficult for John, and I know the radio station set up a studio in his house. And the one common denominator today, I've talked to so many people. I've talked to Clip and Doug and Tom and Jim Yu and Sandy Beach and other people, and they all say, and I spoke to John's wife, and they all say, John lived for that show. That show kept him alive. And I think, Jim, you deserve credit, and everybody at GR, for going the extra mile to keep such a community treasure as John Otto on the air. I'm very serious about that.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. And I would like to pass on, as long as you're lauding me, I would like to pass on much of the praise goes to our engineering staff, in particular Tom Atkins, who worked very hard to make that system work and did a great job of it. So the credit should be spread evenly here among the staff members in the departments.
And one more serious note. When you think of John, you want to smile and laugh, but I think in this last year, in the physical pain and discomfort, you never noticed it on the air. He was as sharp as ever, as good as ever, and I think did some of his best work, Jim, in this last year.
Just last week. Just last week, he was just on the top of his game, as I said earlier, with the joke off, and as you alluded to, Tony, with his sparring, especially at the beginning of the show with James W. Pitts. Oh, what is this about this W thing? Thank you so much, Tony Violanti, news critic, for being with us this evening. Appreciate it. On WGR News Radio 55. And one of the common questions, I know Jim has had 100 phone calls like this. I've had a bunch of phone calls like this. What are the funeral arrangements for John Otto? We do not know at this point. We don't know if there's going to be anything public. We don't know if it's going to be a family-only situation. And, of course, we will respect the wishes of the family when it comes to that. It's up to the family. This is our Remembering John Otto program tonight. We are going to be taking telephone calls from listeners because, you know, we can talk to a lot of the people in the media and a lot of people who had an intimate personal knowledge of John. But as Tony just said, he lived for you guys. He lived for this show. He lived to be there for you. And obviously you want to reciprocate that love even if you didn't agree with him politically, you want to reciprocate that, and we will take calls as we move along tonight on WGR 55. Jim Pastrick is in studio with me. This is Tom Bauerle. It is 10:31. We need to do a short break, and when we come back, more as we remember the best John Otto.
News Radio 55, WGR Buffalo.
They talk about an era of insensitivity and indifference and how it is that people don't care. But I must say, if anything, the organization has gathered heart, and there's more camaraderie here than ever I saw before, owing, to be sure, to the management. I won't say stated policy, but rather impulse and the spirit projected by the management. There's more here than ever there was. Oh, see, that's elegant.
Now we get serious.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing, I should say. Oh, mercy, to this day I've never seen such a precious watch that shows the time here on Earth and on Mars, too. And that's wonderful. No, that is just beautiful. Oh, gosh, that is fantastically good. Is it? Keep offering me this.
On his 40th anniversary, I'm going to play the tape back. So
That is John Otto. He is accepting his watch, his gold watch that was presented to him on his 25th anniversary here at WGR News Radio 55 at the time. That was in Larry Anderson's office. Larry Anderson was the program director of the radio station. The tape was provided to us by Steve Mitchell, who is a member of the Buffalo Broadcasters Hall of Fame. There are all kinds of things and all kinds of great stories to tell about John, and we have tried to gather as much tape as we possibly can. There's a piece of tape here that works especially well with the comments made just a few minutes ago about alternative music and Limp Bizkit and moshing. Tony Violanti was talking about how John was always a person to have one foot in the present, never lived in the past. Here are some of his comments about contemporary music.
Anti-women stance is clear in these lyrics. Limp Bizkit's song. Gee, if I hear about them again, I'll throw up. It's Murder, She Wrote. You barely heard a word as she choked. It wasn't nuttin', N-U-T-T-I-N. It wasn't nuttin', these mindless, mental dwarves, troglodytes, cave people.
That was John.
What a great way with the words.
We want to take some more telephone calls here on WGR 55. Tom Bauerle with Jim Pastrick, our operations manager and program director. Walter in Lockport on WGR 55. Hi. Walter, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello. This is Walter's wife.
Hello, Walter's wife. Your thoughts on remembering John Otto?
Well, I want to thank GR for the privilege of having an extended family member who was a hip, sophisticated, down-home broadcaster. And I traveled across this country in the automobile and listened many nights in motels to late-night talk show hosts, and he was the best. I'll miss him terribly, and I had the privilege of winning one of his mystery voice jackpots. He sent me a beautiful letter, and I told my husband that I'm going to frame it. And I would like to know in the future if it's possible that they will let us know where we can send an appropriate memorial donation in his honor.
In the future, as we have that information, of course, we'll pass it along. It really is up to the family's wishes. Walter's wife, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Let's go to
Tom, you've just betrayed your date.
Oh, I'm sorry, this evening. Did I say this morning? Usually that's only on election night, and yes, Otto would rib me about it.
That's forgivable, though.
I do want to go to Dan Key right now. That's K-I-J, the former president of the, let me get this right, Dan, the Polish American Congress?
No, it's the Polish Union of America here in Buffalo. And I can think of the highlights of John Otto and my contacts with him in just 1 minute. I've begun listening to John Otto when he was spinning old 78 records in the 1950s over Roy Albertson's WBNY, even before he became a talk host. And then in the 1960s, when I was in the county attorney's office, he had me on when he was an afternoon host. And we talked about the workings of family court, and everybody kept calling up asking where they can get birth certificates, which really steamed him off. And the way he'd talk about his trotters and the pacers at Buffalo Raceway, when he'd have his poetry nights, and then, of course, his incomparable interviews with East Side Eddie. Dzień dobry, panie, as he would always say so stentoriously. In 1981, after we had come back from Poland, shortly after Solidarity arose, Rich Kellman of Channel 2 and Stan Pastrick and I were with John Otto for 3 hours. But the voice of John Otto lives. If you pick up your telephone and let it ring for about 20 seconds, there will be an interruption, and then you'll hear this voice that says, if you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again. If you need help, hang up and dial your operator. It's John Otto. The voice of John Otto lives.
No. That's John?
That's John.
Wow. I'd like to look into that.
Yep.
It doesn't
Just
sound
pick
like
up your
John to
phone,
me. That's
Don't
fascinating.
dial anything. Let it ring for about 20 seconds, and you would hear John Otto's incomparable voice.
Dan Key, thank you very much for touching base with us tonight on WGR 55. Let's go to David on a car phone. David, you're on the air.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I just took a big bite of a cheeseburger, so...
Timing is everything.
Yes, always.
You never do that when you're supposed to be on the air. You know that, David.
Exactly. Listen, I just wanted to call. My wife told me the news this afternoon, and you know what? It's devastating to our area, and I'm very saddened, and I got to admit, tears have come to my eyes a couple of times here tonight listening to your broadcast. But I wanted to bring up something. I was listening to his show. I think it might have even been Thanksgiving Day if he was working that day. I'm not sure.
Can I interject here that you're probably going to ask about that tape? And throughout the day today, this is one of the tough things that we have to live with from time to time. That tape is not available. And believe me, as program director of the radio station, I'm as disappointed as anyone because...
It was beautiful.
I've been told... I was told about that tape before... John passed away.
Yeah.
And people told me, I listened to John on Thanksgiving night, and it was a wonderful, elegant soliloquy of thanks. And it just so happened on that night, the machine that we normally use to record John's show was not functioning properly.
Oh, what a shame. I listened to him, and as I was listening to him, I was thinking to myself, I could listen to this man till the end of my days. His voice was just so beautiful. And I went to work. I work in one of the local emergency rooms here, and I walked in, and I mentioned it that I was listening to this program, and I said to one of the doctors that I work with, I said, you know, it almost sounded like a last will and testament. It was so beautiful. I said, it was just so poetic. I said that if this man passes away very soon, I know where he left his last will and testament. It was on the radio on Thanksgiving night.
And that's exactly as he would have wanted it to be.
Absolutely, and if anybody has the John Otto Things I Am Thankful For on Thanksgiving tape, if you could please contact Jim Pastrick at the radio station. We would be eternally grateful for that tape. Like you, I heard the last couple of minutes of it and was very touched. Other people heard the whole thing, and it's all people have been calling about today. It's incredible. Let's go to... Who's up next? We have Eddie calling in on WGR 55.
How are you?
Hello.
Hello. Hello. You know, if Mel Torme was known as the Velvet Fog, I think that John Otto could be known as the Velvet Pillow. He was soothing, he was warm, and he, you know, you listened to him and it felt like he brushed up against your cheek. I had the privilege of being a guest on a show on numerous occasions for his joke-off, and I'll never forget the first time he called me out of the blue. I couldn't believe it was John Otto on the phone and asking me to be on his show, and he, you know, it's a tremendous loss. It certainly is. But
are you the guy from the Funny Bone?
No, I'm not from the Funny Bone. I had a club called a couple clubs in the area called the Comedy Trap, and I host a late-night movie television show now on Channel 7. But it was a loss, but, you know, in certain respects, it was a tremendous gift that we had.
Indeed. Thank you very much for the call.